Okay, it is 4:33. Going to call the meeting of Kerrville Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Dorothy, would you take roll, please?
Yes, sir. Bob Waller, Garrett Harmon,
Here.
Don Barnett,
Here.
Michael Siegerman,
Here.
Rustin Zuber,
Here.
David Jones, I'm sorry,
Here.
Marty Leonard. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Item number 1 on the agenda is a visitor citizens forum. Any person with business not scheduled on the agenda is encouraged to briefly speak their ideas to the commission. Please fill out speaker request form and give it to the commissioner's secretary prior to the meeting. The number of speakers will be limited to the first 10 speakers, and each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. No formal action can be taken on these items, as the Open Meetings Act requires formal action items to be posted on an agenda no later than 72 hours before the meeting. If formal action is required, the items will be placed on an agenda for a future meeting. Mr. Brinkman, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, sir. Name is Harvey Brinkman. Address is 821A Earl Garrett. And most of you that are from Kerrville would know of a place called the Famous Door on West Barnett Street. And the Famous Door, it has an historical marker on it now, thanks to a group that put it together in 2015. In 2013, I became the owner of that property, along with about 11 houses. And through the years, the property owner, A&D Properties number 2, which I'm a managing partner, we've redone about 10 of those houses. Really 12 houses. We've ended up buying others, and then we've turned around and just owner financed the houses or sold them for cash, depending on the buyer. I have a gentleman that would like to buy and bring back the Famous Door as a restaurant. His restaurant theme would be a soul food restaurant. Now, over the years, I got to know quite a few people that ate at the Famous Door in the past. Pat Tinley was one. He told me about it. Buzzy Barbecue. Tom Daniels Sr. He'd stop there for something else maybe than food. I'm not saying what. But the interesting part of it is bringing something to the community that's not there now. There would be no alcohol sales. It would be a family restaurant. The owner would be Johnny and Martha Boroya. They own the Rio Rancho restaurant between here and Ingram on Junction Highway. They own other restaurants also. They have been very successful. That's what excites me about the potential that they may have to do and restore the old building. And I'm here, as Mr. Browning told me a minute ago, I'm a seed planter. And I'm hoping that we get on the agendas in the future to come to you for a change of zoning. And I'm putting it to you that I would like to show you the property. It's a dump. I'm not going to say it's attractive, but it's got history. And it's got the bones to be a good and a viable part of our community. And I do have a handout, if I may, Court. Okay. And I know you can't take action, but I'm just showing you what the layout is, so to speak, of the property.
Well, Harvey, do you want to change the zoning, or do you want to have a conditional use request?
I wouldn't mind being a PD.
We're gonna have to.
Gordon and I haven't really talked.
Yeah,
about
we haven't even talked about this. We're gonna have to look at this from the.
Ground up.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but yeah, we are.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And see what's, see what the feel is.
So we can't do any action on this, but have you had communication with the neighbors?
The buyers are the neighbors, basically.
Okay.
Yes, sir, and not all of them, of course. We want to start with the churches and get them on board.
Okay.
Because it could be a fundraiser place for them too.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Harvey. Appreciate what you're doing with the community, and especially trying to revitalize some areas of the town. And I think Kerrville would really benefit from reclaiming some of its history.
I do too.
Item number 2 on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items listed below in the consent agenda are considered routine or ministerial in nature and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the items will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Gordon, we need to approve each one of these separately?
You can, well, no, you can do them in one motion only, but if someone wants to pull one off for a correction or something, you'll have to do that one
Okay.
individually.
Well, commissioners, if you had a chance to review the minutes.
I've reviewed the minutes. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Is that all
3 of
All
them.
3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the minutes from April 6th, May 4th, and June 1st. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 3 on the agenda, consideration and action. Item 3A is a preliminary plat. Gordon, would you give us some history on this, please?
Certainly, this is a one-lot subdivision, and it's in Kerrville's ETJ. We have reviewed it, and the subdivider has corrected the items that we asked him to do, and we recommend that you approve the plat.
Okay. Does this require a public hearing?
It does not.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions regarding this plat?
I do not.
It looks like we have a little squirrely entrance off of
He has,
Rimrock.
they have this is a access easement. This is a family dividing up property out in the ETJ amongst themselves, so to speak. So this is one of the lots. We may see more in the future.
Okay. All right.
I'll make a motion, we accept this preliminary plat as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the plat, raise your right hand. Passes 5-0. All right. Item 3B. Consideration and action on another preliminary plat. Gordon, would you
Yes, sir,
share this one with us?
Again, this is a plat in the city's ETJ. It's a one-lot subdivision. They are projecting this to be a commercial development out in the ETJ. Staff's reviewed it. We have a list of conditions we would like to have corrected before we see the final plat, and we would recommend that you approve this with those conditions.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed that the city is looking for dimensions of some of these easements.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where,
There, he showed them on here as just a single line, so here's these. We'd like to know exactly the width of those easements, and here they are.
I agree.
This is a batch plant, right?
That wasn't brought to my attention, but if it is, it's in the county, so we're doing what we can do, and that is the platting process. If they are required to submit any kind of EPA or any permits to the city, they haven't done so yet. And I don't know if they're required to.
Wouldn't they have to go to the county?
To go to the county, yes.
Yeah.
And that's why we've asked that they provide us with a schedule of when they go to the county and the date
So
for
the county
commissioners.
reviews,
Yeah.
Is that actually Goat Creek cut off over to the left?
No, sir.
Cedar Mill Drive?
That's Cedar Mill Drive.
No, to the far left over there. It says Goat Creek Road over there.
On the vicinity map?
No.
Yeah, on the vicinity.
Oh, maybe perhaps on the vicinity map.
I was just trying to get bearings of where.
Yeah.
Yeah, the vicinity map, that is
Here,
Goat Creek
it's
cutoff.
over here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Creek?
that's Goat Creek cutoff that runs through there.
Yeah, look, you gotta see it on the big.
Gordon, what is this item 3 on the staff analysis regarding Robby Drive?
Yeah, Robby Drive is
That's
the road comes up, Cedar Mill Drive stops, and Robby Road continues on to this development. They're showing us the right-of-way width, but we want to see the pavement width for that roadway. And the county road specs, the county will be asking that same thing because they have their own specifications for roadways. So
Okay,
we just want to know how big the pavement's going to be
okay.
since it's development.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I went out there and that Robby Road runs
Yeah.
through a quote-unquote subdivision. I
Yeah.
mean, the manufactured homes and whatever else.
Yeah.
But that sure seems like a lot of traffic to be bringing in through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so all we're saying is that,
Yeah, we've got subdivision review authority in the ETJ, and that's all.
Okay. Have any other questions regarding this, this preliminary plat? If not, I'll take a motion.
So staff recommends approval of this subject to your conditions, is that what
Yes.
you're saying, Gordon?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve this preliminary plat subject to the conditions by the ETJ authority.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 4-1. Item 3C on the agenda, a final plat. Gordon.
This is a final plat of subdivision on Bandera Highway. You may know this is the Bandera Highway Mega Storage Facility. They're finally getting that completed. And so we're finishing up the project and they need a certificate of occupancy, and so they'll want their final plat done.
No time like the present.
Yep.
I remember reviewing this, but it was a while back.
Yes, sir. This preliminary plat was approved by the commission in May of 2016. If you go out there now, they're finishing up the sewer line to
Right.
connect the sewer to that's one of the conditions
They
to get
just
approved.
added onto the building there on that side, they've gone
Yeah.
east.
So we will, we'll connect to the city sewer, get all that inspected and done. County will come through and witness the closing of the temporary septic system. TxDOT will final approve their approaches and get that done, and then we'll release the CO. So they're working towards it.
Yeah, they've improved it.
Yep.
With this addition and putting that second entrance in.
I'll make a motion that we accept this final plat as presented.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the final plat. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. Item 3D on the agenda as a replat.
Yes, and on this particular replat, you held a public hearing on this item at the June 1st meeting, and staff asked that you postpone any further action until this meeting. Unfortunately, the agreements and the resolution between the city and the property owner regarding the dedication wording has not been worked out, so I'm gonna ask you to table this.
Okay,
Until
will that need a motion?
Once it's worked out, we'll bring it back to you.
Okay. Does that table require a motion?
Yes, please.
So I'll make a motion that we table this until they
Just
send it
table
back
it.
to us.
We'll bring it back to you when it's ready. We're not gonna keep doing this until we get it done.
So I've got a motion to table this item
I'll second.
and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0 to table. Okay, item 3E is a conditional use permit.
The commission will recall we held this public hearing at the June 1st meeting, and we asked that you postpone this until this meeting to give us some time to work out. The commission wanted to see a area for the applicant to conduct his business, and I noticed that we have some of the neighbors here with us from last time. We put that space together for your review. I don't know if, I think some of the neighbors have come and picked up copies of it. I know that we gave a copy of it to the applicant. He didn't seem to have an issue with the size that we're restricting this to. And we have placed that in a sample motion, if you will, at the end of your staff report, and we'll open it and let you discuss it. And the applicant is here, some of the neighbors are here, if you want to continue that discussion from the last meeting.
So what the city has approved for the
This is an area that we're recommending. We took your comments from the last meeting
Okay.
that you wanted to see this sort of confined to an area. I had our GIS guy, our crack computer guy draw this up, and he said, you know, we sent that to the owner. He didn't object to that, and so we're bringing it back to you guys.
Okay. And the neighbors that are here have had a chance to look at this?
Yes, sir. Any comments?
Any comments?
I would like to make just a couple of comments, if I may.
Absolutely.
Mr. Story, I appreciate you being a local entrepreneur and the work that you're trying to do and improve this property. But there are a couple of concerns that I would like to voice that aren't really conditional on the conditional use. But a couple of things that I just personally I would like to mention was that the business is a little unsightly with some of the appliances sitting out front and the torn awnings. I think putting the pavement down, cleaning things up for the car sales, I think that's going to help. And you had mentioned before about installing a fence that maybe some vehicles may be stored behind. I would just ask that maybe some of that appliance storage go on behind the fence as well. The awnings on the front of the building either be repaired or removed. Like I said, these aren't items that are necessary for the conditional use, but they're just things I think would help improve the property and just probably even improve your business a little bit as well.
Yeah, no, if you don't mind, I can address that. Actually, we
You
have
bet.
an entire package. Part of the reason I haven't moved forward with that is I wanted to make sure I could do this.
Mhm.
We've got a new sign package coming in. The fence is being totally redone and angled, so at that point, everything will be behind the fence.
Okay.
We have a small fenced area. It's supposed to be back there. It got overgrown. So the new fence, everything will be behind the fence. There won't be appliances in the front unless during the day we're working on something and then we either slide it inside or put it behind the fence. So new signage is part of my program as well. We're taking the two sides off, completely off. We're redoing the middle awning, and then we're using the columns to totally reface that and make signage look totally different. So that's all going to be addressed. Appreciate it, though.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
I have a wife that's been on me for about 2 years on that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions or concerns?
You know, I'd just like to make a comment. I really appreciate your cooperation with the neighbors and with the commission here for, you know, taking into account what we're trying to accomplish and being a good neighbor out there and trying to do the best you can to protect what the neighbors are doing. And so you've made it for me, very, very easy to approve this project, and I personally appreciate that.
Okay, I will accept a motion on this conditional use.
I'll make a motion that conditional use is approved as presented with this site plan.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to agenda item 4A, a public hearing and action on a replat. Gordon, could you give us some history,
Yes,
please?
sir. This will start the public hearing portion of the meeting, so
Okay,
I just remind you to make sure you do that every time this comes up. But we do have a replat for the Sidney Baker Plaza lots. This is like Sidney Baker. You have seen the preliminary on this some time ago, and staff's looked at it. We've had DRC look at it numerous times, and we're ready to recommend approval as submitted.
okay. I will open the public meeting at 4:55. Anyone wishing to speak to the commission, please step forward and state your name and address. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close the public hearing at 4:56. Gordon, this is the property's got the new apartment complex going
is.
on it correctly. Yeah. And it looks like there was a change up at the Sidney Baker entrance.
At the entrance, we pulled that back, allowed the easement to maintain. That would have required removal of 3 spaces from their parking count that would have made that lot non-conforming. And we're not going to create a non-conforming situation when it's not necessary. We can get out, in and out as they're doing now under the existing easement, and we felt like that was a better solution.
Okay. So that little triangular piece
Yeah.
is,
That little triangular piece that doesn't look like it's part of the lot is an access easement that this property has from the adjoining property.
okay. All right. And then we have was that a water easement and electric easement?
Correct,
That was not noted before?
yes.
And has, I guess it looks like this conforms with maybe a fire lane or,
Those are, those are fire hydrants and meter locations. And it's our water main that we put in the easement. We waited to make sure they were in the ground, and we knew they were in the right place before we built them.
that's good.
Well, you drew this up.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay,
As-bills are good.
all right. Commissioners, any questions? Or a motion?
I'll move that we accept the replat as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the replat. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. Item 4B is a public hearing on another replat. I will go ahead and open the public hearing at 4:58. Anyone wishing to speak, please step forward and state your name and address. Seeing no one come forward. I will close the public hearing at 4:59. Gordon, can you give us a little history on?
Certainly, this is a replat of some property. This is just outside the city limits. In fact, it's coterminous with our city limits. This is the Rio Rancho Restaurant, if anyone knows where that is, I'm sure you do. This is the property that's owned by that group of people. They are asking us to replat this, and this is currently in the ETJ. And they are anticipating requesting annexation. And so the city council may see more of this than you do, but we went ahead and started the plat process because the owner, this is what he owns, and he wanted it under one lot irregardless, so we go through that process.
So that's the purpose for replatting,
Yeah.
not to build out something. We need a motion.
The purpose is to just replat it, period?
That's all we're doing. Bring all the lots into one configuration.
In anticipation of being annexed.
Okay, all right, because it's pretty jammed up.
Oh, man, yeah.
And, I don't know, restaurant parking. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a bit of an issue there.
Does that get addressed before they get
No,
annexed?
no.
After they get annexed, do they then?
We're in that discussion, but we're not gonna say right now.
Okay, so beyond the purview here.
Yeah.
So what does this do for them?
Water and sewer.
Oh,
So by,
so it might end up being a conditional use situation too.
Well,
grandfathered
you know,
in.
this will be something well beyond our level of discussion in that. And when cities annex, you know, it's one of those things where you take the property and hide hair and all, and then you deal with it later.
Good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
but it's met all of your requirements for the replat?
Yes. We just needed to get it into a configuration that would suit us if we did that. We told the owner we
And this is
wanted it
acceptable.
in one
This would
lot.
be acceptable if
Yeah.
annexed.
We wanted it in one lot so we could work with it.
I got you. I'll make a motion to accept the replat as requested.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second to accept the replat as presented. All in favor? Raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. Item 4C is a public hearing and replat.
One more replat.
I will open the public hearing at 5:02. Anyone wishing to speak to the commission, please step forward and state your name and address. Seeing no one step forward, I'll close the public hearing at 5:03. Gordon?
This is, like I said, one more replat. This is a replat, again, this is in the ETJ. They're reconfiguring two lots. You can see from the way it's platted right now, lot 7 and 17. And they are doing this to allow lot 7R, to create 7R as a buildable lot. And that's the reason for doing that.
Now, there's an existing structure on 7R right now, at least that's what was shown in our packet.
There is on 7R, I think there is on 17R. I think
Yeah,
17R,
17R right here, yeah.
yeah, I think 7R will be the new lot.
On the drawing provided in our packet, it shows a house on 7R
Okay,
and some outbuildings on 17 are.
Okay, maybe I've got it the other way around. I don't have that plat with me, but.
I have a couple of questions. The drawing on the monitor is a little different than what was sent in the packet.
Okay, yeah, it sure shouldn't be. Let's take a look. Let's see what I've got about it.
The monitor doesn't show any of the
On this drawing.
Yep.
No,
What'd you get, Gary?
We have houses,
Barn
barns.
right here, and 10 barn here.
another one.
you
Yeah, the
got
one we
one
got,
with square.
it's got houses and stuff on it. It shows buildings, houses.
No, that's, you shouldn't have gotten that.
That's the one I got. That's the one I got.
Ignore the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
This one was provided by Russia.
Well,
And the thing that we were doing is that we're splitting this up to create two lots. One, I guess one does have a house on it.
mhm.
The other will be a buildable lot
Mhm.
for one of your children.
My concerns are, number one, looks like we have a power line that's out of the easement.
Easement going through there, yes.
We got an easement here. The survey shows a power line outside of that easement. Would it be a good idea to try and
We'll
the-
ask that question of the survey.
expand the easement to include that? Because, you know, we don't want to create an issue with utility service getting onto private property. That's one question I have. The other question I have is whenever I look at as platted
Mhm.
versus
Proposed.
proposed, the property lines don't quite match up. And I wish somebody from Vocal was here to maybe clarify that. I know this is an old drawing,
Yeah.
but we have a point right here that should be more or less between 17 and 18, but it's over here to one side, and the dimensions don't line up with it. There's some inconsistencies here that,
You're talking about going between, looking at this and looking at this.
yeah, where
Yeah, I mean, see, you got a point.
He's looking at this.
I understand you're looking at that one. But
This
down
one-
here on the impact.
yeah, but this is only 68 feet, and this is 115.
That's true.
You can
Me.
certainly, if you'd like, if you want to do, we can table this right back and correct these questions.
I think it's probably a good idea.
I think so. I think there's just some inconsistencies here that need to be looked at, mainly
We can get
regarding,
Vocal back here too.
yeah, mainly regarding the power line and the property lines.
Well, the other thing is, which, I mean, if there's a building already on our portion of it, is this the lot they're trying to cut out? And if so, what's the access to it?
Well, this all becomes one lot right here,
Well,
access
that's
off
it.
of Goat Creek,
Okay.
and this one is access off to the Tinco.
Okay, all right. I mean, I'm under the umbrella of trying to create another lot.
We've got there are two lots now.
There's four.
Right, okay, and two houses.
Yeah, and so they're taking that and really reducing the size of lot 7.
Okay, and increase,
Well, increasing the lines, so they're bringing this line to like right here.
The line on 17.
Well, it's 7 and 8, and 17 and 18. It's these four.
So
And
four
we're
lots.
going to replat it to where this is one and this is one.
Which two are one?
Where 17, 18. These are
Yeah.
what we're looking at. We're putting a new line here, creating a new 7 and a new 17. So this will be 1 and this will be 1. That's what this and this is.
So 6 and 7 will come.
Not 6, 7 and 8.
Seven
You know,
and
the
eight.
bottom half of 7 and 8 become 1,
There to there.
and the top half of 7 and 8, and 17 and 18 all becomes 1.
Okay.
But that easement stays in
And
place.
where is the access to both of them?
Access off of Goat Creek Cutoff on the top, and access of Tanglewood on the
On the
bottom.
bottom.
But I feel there's some inconsistencies with some of the,
I'm still not quite understanding.
I'm sorry, we didn't catch that before.
Well, these are 2 lots.
I get this, there are 4 lots.
Mhm.
There's 4 now, there will be 2.
4 lots, there'll be 2.
And we're making
There'll
So
be
you're
two.
making, you're making,
7, making this 7 and 8 becomes 7R. Just
okay,
bottom half.
okay, okay.
And 17, 18, and the remainder of these 2 become the other part of it.
But these other lots are gonna stay the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So these,
Well, 6?
With that in mind, then that number, if it's from here to there, becomes okay.
Except that it doesn't match
I-
that one.
Yeah, okay.
the surveys don't match, survey lines don't match.
But between the lines on the as platted versus the lines on the
New.
proposed, this property line up on Goat Creek Cutoff does not jive with
We
the,
need to get a better look at the finished product, I think, compared
Yeah.
to what this way it is right now.
Mhm.
I really think that's,
Okay, let's table, I think tabling is a good idea.
Let's just say,
Have vocal come in.
yeah, we held a public hearing,
Okay.
we'll table it.
and maybe require vocal to come.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we table this subject to some clarification at the next meeting and having the surveyor here to answer questions.
All right. Got a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Passes 5-0. Okay. Item 4D is public hearing and action on an annexation and zoning. I will open the public hearing at 5:10. Anyone wishing to speak, please step forward and give your name and address. Seeing no one step forward, I will close the public hearing at 5:11. Gordon, could you give us some?
Certainly. If you looked in your packet with this item, you saw the preliminary plat for this at your last meeting.
Yes.
The development agreement between the city and the Comanche Trace Ranch and Golf Club back in the late 90s provided a condition that with the submittal of a preliminary plat, that automatically started the annexation process. So we held the preliminary plat last time. This is basically their request for annexation and zoning. And what we will ask you to do tonight is make that recommendation to council that they annex this property and zone it. And we've recommended a zoning of planned development residential. We have some mixed housing that we have to look at. Where this sits in the great scheme of things, if you're trying to figure it out like I did when I first saw the preliminary plat, this will complete the clubhouse drive between 2 sections that are currently existing, section phase 4 and phase 11, I believe. And so this will complete that roadway between those 2 and make that road complete. It's not a very big section of Comanche Trace based on their past annexation, but this is the first one they've done in a long, long time. So in fact, I worked on 11 and 12, 7 years ago, I think, 8 years ago, when they brought those 2 sections in. And, so this is the process of how we do this. This is a recommendation from the commission to council, and we have the public hearings for annexation scheduled for council's meetings in July.
When the city, will they follow the border of this, or do they extend?
This section is internal to the Comanche Trace property, so it won't affect our ETJ or anything. This is
It's
just
right in the middle of it.
filling a hole in a donut hole
Yeah.
that we have. That's the way this whole thing was developed, the Comanche Trace is up 1,200 acres, and so they stay in the county, and they get their nice big fat ag exemption on their taxes, and they only annex when they absolutely have to. Once again, it's a water and sewer issue.
Right.
Well, they're developing these lots. That's the,
Yeah. Typically, they don't come back through with a section until they have sold out
Of the other
of sections. And this time, they're feeling, I think they were feeling some pressure from some of the natives out there to connect this road.
Well,
That's the
they're-
impression I got from the developers.
They're providing a product that seems to be in demand that they don't have right now.
Yeah,
Because this is a extension of Oak Park to create some single-family homes on the golf course, and then there's some garden homes, and then they're
Garden
gonna
homes.
build, my understanding is they're gonna build about 4 or 6 more golf villas.
yeah. The villas are technically, the villas are in the Block D up at the top of the page, and that is currently in the city limit.
Yes. It's interesting how these two little sections right here are not in the city.
Yeah.
I know that the golf course, what we call the Honor House, is not in the city.
yeah.
And when they do the annexation, everybody will be happy because they'll bring water and sewer up there.
Yeah,
They don't have now.
no, they don't.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking for, is just a recommendation from the commission that we'll pass on to council, and the council will hear this. We'll start hearing, council will hold 4 public hearings on this, and it'll stretch on until August. They'll have public hearings on the annexation, and then they will have public hearings on adopting the zoning ordinance.
I'll make a motion that we present this to city council for annexation and development.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend annexation to city council. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. And that brings us to item 5A for discussion. Review the home occupations. Would this be a, goes beyond the definition, development requirements.
Yeah, no, this is just a continuation of the discussion we had back in the May 4th meeting. I found another definition for home occupation. I just threw it in there to see what you think. But we did go in and look at some sections that the commission highlighted the last time we talked. And we looked at we redid the registration section. We redid the storage definition, if you will, advertising and signage, permitted uses and prohibited uses, and added a section to the existing home occupation sections, which is basically the non-conforming home occupation sections that would prohibit certain uses irregardless that they're in operation or not today. And I think we talked about that last time, and some of those were the issues of concern were the auto repair people. But we went back and looked at the registration requirement, modified that down to just one paragraph, which would allow us to remove paragraph 4, which was the expiration. The reason that I guess I keep harping on the registration issue is not an issue of Big Brother, it's an issue of management, it's an issue of files that, and records that when the people call the office and ask about a home occupation in their neighborhood, we don't have to send anybody out, we can just look in the files and say, yes, they do have a home occupation. And they have agreed in principle to conduct it as stated in the ordinance. And hopefully that ends the conversation. And if they are in violation, of course, then we'll go out and do something about it. But that's the intent and the reason for the registration.
I guess we should just kind of hit these things in order.
Sure.
Line number 57, home occupation definition. I believe personally that the first one, where it says see attached complete definition, would probably be all we need. I have some concerns with the second one down here in red, where it says within a home or dwelling unit which is clearly incidental and secondary to the use of the premises for residential purposes, which I guess when I first read it, it made it sound like that if you're going to have a home occupation, you make sure that somebody could tell it was separate.
No,
and but that's not.
No, I guess the reason the way that's worded is that if someone were to start a business in their home, the intent is that the primary use of that property is residential, and it doesn't get reversed to where the residence is 25% of the structure and the business is 75% of the structure. So, but like I said, I stumbled across this one in another city's. I think this came out of city Abilene actually. But I'm perfectly fine with the first one as well.
Well, and I think we addressed the size in another area, and I guess after reading it a few times, I could understand what the intent was, but it seemed a little confusing at first. Personally, I think I would stick with the see attached complete definition.
I tend to agree because I think when you get into the one that's in red down there, it becomes a little bit subjective. Which what is clearly incidental and secondary? You know, I think I agree with Gary on that.
Well, as I read it from the standpoint to the way Gordon said it is, it's clearly a residence of which inside the residence there's something incidental or minor going on. Not, in other words, at HEB when they started, they lived upstairs, but the store was downstairs.
Yeah.
That's not incidental to that, but that was not their home. I mean, it was their home, but they lived upstairs, but they were downtown. I mean, it's a little different kind of property. I think that's what this to me says is, I have a computer business in my one room in the house. But that's the way I read it. That's the way I took it. I see your point, but it is incidental or secondary to the use of the premises, which is primarily residential.
Well, and you've spoken also to the fact that you need to, that you know, you want us to, and you want the regs to be such that there's no question about them and whatsoever. And so whenever to me, it would see, I'm like you, Don, I'd say, you know, no, you know, and in fact, I don't think you need to put percentage, but easily, if you go halfway past, you know, half of the house is the business and half is residential, you know, that's not in the spirit of what you're trying to do.
What we're trying to do with this will be a new provision in the ordinances to make sure that and Danny Batts is here again if you have any questions for him, so his code enforcement people have an ordinance that will be, that they can take, if necessary, I mean, if it comes to that they can take someone to court and say they are not in compliance. They're not in compliance with this, you know, provision of the city's ordinance.
Does this help you, Danny?
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
Just this language does.
The one that's in red, Danny, that helps you?
Well, either one. It doesn't matter for me. I just need an ordinance that is defined, you know, as far as what we can enforce. Right now, we have nothing to enforce.
thought we heard of them a long time.
Oh. I guess whatever's gonna be easiest for Danny and the city to defend and enforce.
I tell you, I've got one right now, that's, I won't give you the address at this point, but I've got one right now that the entire yard, driveway, the entire property is completely full of materials for what that person's gonna do, the storage of all the materials outside. They don't even have parking, off-street parking anymore. But I don't have an ordinance. I can't even address anything on the property about.
But from what I saw in here, you will have a change. Storage shall be enclosed within the residence, attached garage or permitted accessory building. Outside storage in conjunction with a home occupation shall be prohibited.
Right, and that's part of our definition.
That'll solve your problem with that.
That's part of our definition, but we don't have an ordinance saying that, so that's, yes, you're right. That would certainly help.
But the example that you're giving us is clearly from observation is more than incidental
Yes,
to the resident.
yes.
So that's where the line crosses. It gives you that latitude. It's enforceable because it's more than incidental.
You take a residential neighborhood, everything looks great, and then
One house.
boom, one
Yeah.
house, and so you're like, wow.
He's out. Not a resident.
I think that, they've done some numbers, with the, as we've had a changeover in management, as you were, and they get 90-95% compliance. There's very few folks that they actually have to,
Sure,
say,
bring the
okay,
hammer
here,
down.
here, we've done everything we can do, and here's here's the ticket. But this kind of stuff gives them something that they can point to and say, these are the rules. And right now, they're very limited in what they can do with this particular item, with home occupation, that they can do.
My inclination is to make the ordinance a little stronger since it's been weak for a period of time. If we find some problem with that, we can always back off from the language.
I tend to agree. I think the
I'd
stronger
like
you
to give
make
them
it
more-
without being encumbering is.
I'd like to give them more strength in their ordinances and then let them say, we need to back off. I don't think that's gonna happen, Kerrville, because the guys that wanna violate this need to be brought to task.
They say we have probably 98% voluntary compliance.
They'll go right along with it.
Most everybody, we're not out harassing neighborhoods or whatnot. It's always a gross violation when you find one. And when you don't have the tools to deal with the gross violation, that makes it difficult.
Yeah.
After reading this last definition several times, I think I would be fine with it. Can we agree that one is acceptable and keep on going down
Sure.
our list?
I agree.
Okay.
Works for me.
All right. We have general provisions and scope. I had a note at the end of number 2 for purpose where it stretches over onto the next page. Does not create a nuisance or otherwise adversely impact the health, safety, or welfare of the neighborhood. I think I'd like to stop it there. I think or interfere with their neighbors' peaceful and quiet enjoyment of the home and domicile.
We just ended at the welfare of the neighborhood.
I think so.
Yeah,
because
that rest of that's very subjective.
it is. You could get an angry neighbor that they could have an issue over something completely different
You're right.
and use this for
That's true.
ammunition. So
Yeah.
I think if we strike that
We can do that.
after neighborhood would probably be pretty good.
Yeah, enjoyment's
Yeah.
a tough word.
A lot of people don't know what domicile means anyway, so. they just-
Right.
They all
Moving
know
on.
what enjoyment means.
Moving on to
Also,
registration.
Let me just say one thing about that before we go on. I'm not gonna disagree with you, but I will say this. I've never been involved with any kind of a lease for commercial lease or building lease that this kind of language does not show up in it.
Mhm.
That if you're gonna lease a piece of property, they always put in there
Right, especially residential.
that if you violate the peaceful enjoyment of the residents, you go out. So that's why it's there.
Well, and I think for a lease, a private document,
Yeah, I
I
understand.
think that's fine. I think for a public document that the city is putting out there, I think it leaves, there's a lot more open
We're fine,
interpretation there.
We're fine with that.
Number 3 on registration.
The intent of this is to replace all of the black print in items 3 and 4 with what you see in red.
Okay.
Gordon, what, if someone doesn't register, and I've stated I don't like the registration completely,
Sure.
but if somebody doesn't register, is there a penalty if they do it?
Well,
or,
if this is adopted and becomes part of the zoning ordinance, there's a statement at the back of the zoning ordinance that violations of anything within that document, you can be fined. Now, and in the court, the judge will set that fine. It's got a maximum of $2,000. Now, what we do with a situation like this, though, is we go up and say, look, a neighbor has called on us. You've got a home occupation. It appears that it meets everything in the ordinance. We need you to register. We need you to register with this.
could we put
If they
some
don't want to register, I don't know. I don't know what we would do.
We don't have that many, but my thought process would be if we became aware of someone who was operating a home occupation without being registered, most likely it would be just ignorance of the ordinance that they didn't realize they were supposed to be. I would send an officer out and have them take a registration application with them. Maybe they might even allow them to fill it out while they're on site, just to help them get it registered. Mainly, I think our registration is, it just allows us to know, not necessarily where they are, but we get public information requests all the time about properties, like if you're gonna buy a house on this street, have you had any violations regarding this property? How many home occupations would be on this street? If you're buying a house and you look and you find you've got 4 daycares up and down the street, maybe you don't wanna buy on that street. I don't know. It's just really more of a public information tool and for us to know that they exist,
Yeah.
not for us to go out.
And we do get that request, from folks saying, are there any businesses on the street, or are there, any sex offenders on the street, or there, people want to know that before they move in. So
What is, I tend to think the registration of the businesses is a good thing, simply, so I think that's the biggest thing, so people have the right to find out if they're moving into a neighborhood, like you're saying, there's a daycare, there's something there. What is again, I understand you're saying, what is the teeth of, let's say you have someone that has a business and they're completely compliant within everything they're supposed to do, but they just tell you, I'm not registering.
Well, we could cite them for failure to register.
And what is the penalty for that?
Judge would set the fine, it would go to court, and judge would we would go before our city court. Judge would find them and if he finds them in violation, he has the right to set a fine of anywhere from up to $2,000 a day. Most of the time, obviously, we don't do that, but most of the time, the fines are a couple $100 up to $500. It would make it. He would make it more profitable to sign up than he would. I doubt we would ever get there.
Isn't this
I think most of the time when we run across when the city will run across someone, it's going to be they didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once they find out that, that we're not going to be asking, we're not going to be taking blood samples or anything like that. We just want to know what you're doing.
Can we put language in there that if the person doesn't know, they wouldn't be fined?
Oh, they wouldn't be.
Yeah.
If they were made aware and refused
Yeah, I
to
think if
fill it out, that's when
once they're
we
given
would-
the
we would-
opportunity to register, then they register, I don't think there should be a fine, but
Oh,
if
no,
they
right.
don't.
No,
We
no.
don't work for fines.
We don't- that's
work
not the
for
approach.
Compliance and voluntary compliance and educating somebody if they've done something wrong. And like I say, 98% of the population is is, wow, I didn't know, you know, or, okay, and like I said, our officers could carry, I'm sure we'd make a very simple registration form, you know, and, offer to help fill it out right then and there on site, take it back, enter our information in, and then they'd be registered. It's not something that we're gonna, it'd be great that everybody who's out there, if they see this, they wanna come in and voluntary registration, that's great. If we come across folks who haven't done it, then we would go the extra mile to try to make it, the process as easy as possible to get it registered, you know. And so, I have not found a large amount of people, a large amount of citizens that are belligerent, you know, towards it. You know, our staff is trained very well to treat everyone with respect, no matter what their station is, and just to try to help things along, not to go out there and, you know, try to write a citation, you know, day one. That's not something we commonly, on every violation that we have, we're commonly out there, good Lord, you know, 30 days into something, trying to get someone to comply before a citation is ever written, because we go through warning after warning and you know, counseling and trying to get it done. And if we just absolutely cannot get someone to comply, is the only time we ever write a citation.
I'm gonna guess that most of the people that don't want to register are probably non-conforming businesses.
Well, I mean, being someone who's a home occupation and will be from now on, yeah, I understand the need for the registration. I can appreciate that. Me personally, it bothers me a little bit. I could see that registration list turning into something that grows, needs to be managed, needs more money or personnel. Then we need to have fees, and you know, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to be compliant. And that's not really an issue. I just, you know.
If there's no cancellation, after a period of time, does that information
No,
become
typically,
polluted?
and, you know, the way this is set up right now is that it will automatically and continue to automatically renew unless the applicant or the property owner calls and says, well, I've stopped work. And then
So he didn't have to renew his license every year?
No.
Once he's registered?
Unless, you know, and we will, some people will, you know, call and say, you know, that widget business I had in my house, I've stopped doing that. And so it's fine, you're off the list. Others will say, oh, yeah, I forgot. And we'll find out they've stopped doing it. I mean, you know, that's the way it works. But, and you know, and in going back and looking at other cities, I mean, some cities charge, you know, an application and registration fee. We have no intention of doing that. We just want to be able to know where they are when we get requests for information.
Can we write that in there?
I'm sorry?
No application, no registration fee will be.
That's not anything we've looked at. We've even talked about doing.
No, I'm saying, can we write
Put
that in
language in here.
Oh, that there be no fee?
there? Yeah. I mean, that can always be reversed by another group down the road, but at least it shows our intent that there wasn't supposed to be a fee.
I don't know. I guess we could put it in there somewhere, Russell. I don't know exactly where we'd find it, but I mean, we will or can, you know, once this is done and we set the public hearings for this, we will have the registration fee on there. We put on there that no fee required.
Put that on the application
Yeah.
form.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be the way to do that.
All right, I beat that dead horse enough.
Because, you know, we're not done with this. I mean, and you're not done with this either. I mean, what we're looking for is to get to a point where we have a section or document, if you will, that you can take now and hold public hearings on.
Okay, so for those commissioners who are in favor of registration, do you have any concerns or recommendations? Is the registration required note listed going to be satisfactory for your needs?
I mean, it appears to work. I mean, I'm not so sure that it just automatically renews is a good policy. but not having had any experience in this, I just don't really know. I mean, I tend to agree with, it could get convoluted, you know. But, I mean, we can always establish a policy and see how it works, and I think this is
The starting point.
you know, concise enough, but strict enough to where I think it'll work for registration. And if it becomes an issue, if something has to be tweaked on, we can always do that, or whoever else is here can do that.
Yeah, I would like to, see some language in the ordinance saying no fee would be required. I think that would help make it more palatable to people like me with concerns about it. But I'm just one voice up here.
Is that, would you be equally satisfied with something on the form itself, or would you prefer it in the ordinance itself?
I think I would prefer it in the ordinance itself. Gets more people to, I guess more people with more authority to look at it.
We'll look at something, we'll play with something, see if we get something in there.
Okay. Moving on, we had standards of operations. And under employees, you had a question, does the commission want to consider allowing persons from outside residence to be engaged in the home occupation? And I guess, I agree with the way it's stated. No one other than the occupant of the residence shall be engaged in the home occupation.
Yeah. I put that sort of that question underneath because I wasn't 100% sure from my notes from the last meeting if that was something y'all were looking at doing. Is some places I went back and looked at other ordinances. Some cities allow it, some cities don't.
I agree in the basic premise, but for example, with myself, occasionally I could have, say, a draftsman on contract or another consultant, somebody that would come by, not necessarily every day, but maybe once a week, that's coming by to get information or pass off information.
Now this is not intended for this isn't what this usually where this condition is placed is that this is a full-time employee that comes in every morning and goes to work. Now, if you're hiring, Garrett, in your business, if you're hiring a draftsman who's probably doing this at his house,
right?
But he doesn't work.
He comes by and picks up.
And he does not work for me.
He's not an employee of your
He's not even an employee to start with.
home-based business. So I think that.
And he'll come by and pick up. He'll come by and pick up something for you, take it home and do it. And that's we're not looking at stopping that at all. What this is really refers to is a full-time employee. Yeah. This is the daycare center where the daycare is operated out of my house, and then I have 2 other people come over every morning to help me control the kids. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the consultant that comes by, or if you're working with one of the Hewitt or Maxwell or one of the engineers on something, he comes by, you guys look at a drawing and he leaves. We're not looking at that.
Yeah.
We're looking at a full-time, come to the house, 8 to 5 employee.
Well, so could that be dealt with by saying no one other than the occupant of the residence shall be engaged full-time in the home occupation?
Well, you can't
I
say
mean,
that.
I don't want to get into language stuff.
And then you could
I
have
think
5 part-time
Because
employees.
when they read it, people are smart, if I have.
Oh, I know, I mean,
No, you could have 5 part-time.
Well, I was gonna say, that opens up the.
Yeah, he's only here 20 hours a week, I don't have to pay insurance, right?
Or I mean, you could put at the end of this on a daily basis. For example, I could have a draftsman that is not an employee that I'm paying contract, but he could be coming every day, and I could see how that could start to become a problem.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm trying to find some general language to limit that activity. And I thought maybe just putting in there on a daily basis.
Well, you can't even do that, because then you can have someone every other day.
Right.
Yeah.
You can have someone that comes there, you could have one person that comes there 3 days a week and another person that comes there the other 3 days a week. So, I mean, you can't really,
People get
I
very,
understand,
you
I
know,
understand
very
what
creative
you're trying to
around
say. I
that.
don't know
Nothing,
exactly what the language is.
Well,
to
and I
do
guess
it.
the fact that it's under the line of employees,
We need a good English
that
major.
may be as
Yeah.
best as we can do.
You know, we could wordsmith this to death and there'll still be a hole in it somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
can try this, and I mean, this may become
Mhm.
something that needs to be addressed later. I
Mhm.
understand what you're saying, but I would not consider someone that's doing professional services for you, that comes there and does draft work for you or consults with you, to be an employee of your home-based business.
Yeah.
That would not
Yeah,
be an
I
issue
don't
for
think,
me.
I don't think, I don't think I,
don't have staff to sit outside in your house and watch and wait.
yeah, yeah.
We're not there.
We don't have the people to do that.
All right, item number 2, space and location. I think that
Yeah, that
makes
That's-
sense to me.
That's standard language. That's everything I've found so far.
Storage, I kind of like the way it was written before,
Okay.
personally. I could see, some items that, as long as they were screened from the right-of-way and from the neighbors.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you need to add the neighbors, because being
Mhm.
screened from the right-of-way doesn't
Yeah.
protect the neighbor next door.
Well, we had some discussion at the last meeting on, the way it was written now, or the way it's in black, would not, allow storage in an accessory building. If you had a permitted accessory building in your backyard. And it would-
I tell you, my personal opinion is, I tend to like the language that outside storage is not permitted, because that will probably eliminate some home-based businesses that probably shouldn't be home-based businesses. I mean, you may have a plumbing contractor, electrical contractor, but he ought to be able to put everything he wants to use within either his garage or a permitted building.
The idea is it's supposed to look like a house, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we
I
have
tend
a
to
lot
like,
of- lot of portable storage buildings that are delivered throughout town, and anybody can get one under 120 square feet, doesn't even require a permit.
Right.
right.
So we get a lot of those in people's backyards and whatnot, and you don't see them most of the time, they're not visible from public right of way, so I don't know how you would regulate that home business, from saying, well, I don't use that for my business, I use that, and because we're not gonna be out there
looking at it.
looking.
As long as the little building is permitted, you don't really care what's in it, as
That's
long as
right.
it's not a chemical that's.
That's right.
Well, unless we see an air conditioner, electric, that kind of stuff going to it, then you figure there's somebody in it.
Yeah.
And there are some of those out there.
I like the red definition. Seems to-
Can we add outside storage in conjunction with the home occupation? Must be screened, and use a screening definition from,
So you're inclined to allow some outside storage?
I'm
As long as
inclined,
you can't see it.
as long as you can't see it, as long as
Nobody,
people on the road or neighbors, as long as nobody can see that.
So we could move, use the first sentence in red and you go back and add the second in black. You see what I'm saying?
just not visible,
Not
period.
I
visible
would
from the
not-
public.
Not visible from the public
I would
right of way.
strike public right of way and just be not visible from any public view.
Well, I mean, I think Danny's people are restricted to the public right of way.
We are, we have to.
Well, do you want to look down into your neighbor's yard though?
I don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's private,
Mhm.
so.
Well, it is to a point, if your neighbor has a two-story house and you've got a bunch of stuff stored in your backyard that's not stored as neatly as maybe they would do it, they would call code enforcement, and code enforcement can go with the neighbor upstairs, look through the neighbor's window into your backyard and see it. And it would be accumulation of debris or whatever, they could file, then we would at that point have to try to go in and.
Well, I mean, you could go, I live, and Garrett lives next door to me, and he's got a plumbing supply business, and he's got, 25 feet of pipe in his backyard that I can stand in my backyard and look at and say, I don't wanna look at that, cause this is a residence. You could go into his backyard and look into that backyard and, you know.
Yeah, basically, I would have to ask permission to go into his backyard.
Yeah, but I mean, if he gave you permission.
Right, if he, you know, so,
But I'm not so sure that
I think the outside storage of materials creates, we don't have a huge issue, just in a talking point. I think outside storage of materials leaves it open to the complaint by a neighbor, looking over his fence and saying, wow, he's got just got a bunch of stuff piled up
or he's
back
got a
there.
bunch of,
We have a
he's got
lot
a
of,
bunch of washing machines back there or something like that.
and so he may not be visible from the public right away, but if the neighbor can see it, it is now becomes a complaint-based issue, and then we have to respond to it. If it's in a storage building, I don't see it.
Yeah, and that's not that different than some commercial areas where you can't store materials, so it's
Right.
not, that's not that
Okay.
restrictive, I don't think.
All right, I give.
Let's just put it in like this, and if
In the
there's a
red, use the
legitimate
red
concern
and-
by someone,
Yeah.
they can come to us and we can say, we can deal with it.
Right.
Okay.
And use the language, the new language added
In
for
the
that.
red, okay.
Number 4, alterations. I was just wanting to strike the phrase, such as the creation of a separate entrance, to where it just reads, no exterior alterations to the dwelling which changes the residential appearance or character shall be
I
permitted.
think that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, I actually had a house that had a side entrance on the front.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
It
I
looked
don't think we need
residential.
to-
This was done to where you start a home business and the first thing you do is you pop another door into
You're
the
adding
third
on.
bedroom.
Yeah, right.
You know, yeah. But no, we'd certainly take that out, that's not a problem.
Which I think, putting another door in the second bedroom would be fine, as long as it looks like it's supposed to be there.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Now, putting a drive-through window,
Yeah.
that'd be something different.
Yeah, drive through the window is a problem, yeah.
Oops.
How many employees though?
Number 5, equipment. This seems to make sense. I think found in a household or general office is a little vague, and maybe it's vague on purpose.
It is vague, and I don't know if it's on purpose, but that is fairly common language when you get into this sort of thing. That's gonna be a subject call or judgment call by the code folks.
That looks like that would be something you get rid of the pipe and you're, guys,
But if somebody had a lathe
Yeah.
or a joiner, or a bigger piece of equipment that most people don't have that they use to make furniture or something like that, yeah, that could be construed as not normally found, but
But if
yeah,
it's in their garage and you can't see it.
right,
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
can't hear it.
see it,
and
you can't hear it.
I guess leaving it a little vague was probably
Yeah, I think if
helpful.
you're looking at a lathe that like you would buy it, back in the old days where you go to Sears and look at those things, that's probably household use.
Mhm.
If you have to go and or have one custom built and brought out there, that's probably not.
Mhm.
So that's sort of the intent.
Sales and display, I like the way that's presented. Any other comments on that? Nuisances. The only thing I might suggest is the creation of any noise, put in parentheses, above a certain decibel level, whatever the city's.
We don't have a noise ordinance.
Oh, really?
No,
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 honey,
What you may do is just put the creation of noise, odors, vibrations, blah, blah, which is detectable outside the structure.
Yeah,
I mean,
the,
if you've got a noise going on in your house, not any, that's detectable to outside, that might be,
Okay.
I mean, again, that's kind of a subjective thing. I mean, if you're doing something in your house where the neighbors can hear it,
Mhm.
but you could be right, obsessive noise.
I mean, because again, you kind of get into that angry neighbor issue.
Yeah.
That, oh, he's out there.
Yeah.
And you're not even making any more noise than a leaf blower, but it
Maybe
could
you
be.
might put in there the creation of any obsessive
the
noise.
only time I've had an issue with that is that it wasn't the level of noise as much it was the time of the noise.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, and this was really a ham radio operator. It wasn't even a home occupation thing, but he keyed that mic and it went right into the neighbor's baby monitor.
Oh, nice.
I had a guy on Guadalupe doing chainsaw art. He was out in the front yard carving things with a chainsaw for hours at a time.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that one we had to ask.
I mean, could we put the creation of any excessive noise?
Yeah.
What kind?
Excessive,
Excessive?
something to give
And
it.
that can be somewhat vague, but it still can be used, like you're talking about. If someone's out there with a chainsaw all day, that's obsessive.
Well, I believe the county has a noise ordinance
I don't know.
And- that,
So, you know, some cities do have a nuisance ordinance that includes, you know, noise and odors and all that stuff, and they have sophisticated equipment that they can measure the decibels. I mean, you know, Fredericksburg's going through that now with the live music stuff, so, I don't think, we don't have any of that.
I guess, you know, if we can put excessive in there so that, you know, we can give the
We
intent.
we can put it in there, and then we may have to later come back and define it, but
Yeah.
we'll put it in there.
But you're right. I mean, that kind of gives you a little attitude with an angry neighbor.
Okay, number 8, deliveries. That seems to make sense. Traffic. I don't know. Does anybody else have any concerns with deliveries?
No. I think it-
Traffic. Home occupation shall not involve the regular visits of clients, employees, or other persons to the residence to the conduct of home occupation. I was thinking maybe strike the word regular and change it to daily. A once a week visit from a client could be regular.
Okay.
And so, you know, somebody come in every day, I think
I
becomes
totally
an
agree with you. I mean,
issue.
regular could be considered a whole bunch of, like you say, if a guy comes every Friday,
Yeah,
it's not obsessive,
no.
but it is regular.
Yeah, no, I mean, if once or twice a week would not be excessive, but it would be regular, so, yeah, we can change it to daily.
I think just
Unless-
change that to daily.
Yeah.
And I think I'd like to try and address the use of on-street parking some way, but I don't know if there is. I wrote in here at the end of that sentence, resident, let's see, to the conduct of the home occupation that requires the use of on-street parking.
Well, I think, and I would have to go back and look unless Danny knows off the top of his head, I think that, I don't think we can regulate on-street parking. I mean, if.
For on-street, yeah, we don't regulate on-street parking.
Well, what if guys parking a jalopy out there for months at a time?
Well, if it's a junk vehicle.
Junk vehicles
we
different.
can get
Okay, it's a
those
different
moved.
issue.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But if
I
it's
think
a
you might
collector
have-
car, he's got it licensed and stuff, and it,
If it's not-
Unlicensed
if
is
it's
the
not
issue.
done,
Yeah.
if it's not
But I mean,
5
you know, I
times a
mean,
day and it's not
But it's
guaranteed.
parked there all
You've
day.
got a driveway
Someone
for
comes
2
to your house
cars, and
wants
you've
to
got,
park in the street,
you know, husband, wife, and 2 teenagers, they're parking somewhere,
yeah.
Yeah,
and generally it's on the street,
true.
so it's hard for us
When
to
you have a
regulate
party at your
on-street
house, you
parking.
have 15 people come over, you might have 10 cars parked up and down the street. I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah, but if you're running a daycare and you don't have any
Yeah,
parking and you got 10 cars showing up at
yeah.
5:15
now,
every day.
And you're gonna see that, and I'm surprised we don't get any complaints about that now. I mean, where I, you know, would walk our dogs in the morning, I go by 2 or 3 daycare centers in our area, and it's like a drive-by. They drive by, slam on the brakes, throw the kid out, you know, go to work. So there's 3 or 4 cars parked in front of these houses every morning.
Is there no,
As they're taking the kid, they got kids and diaper bags and all this stuff.
Gordon, is there no code or ordinance or restriction? I mean, you can't have an outside employee work in your home, if you're running a daycare business. How many kids can one person take care
Oh,
of?
that's regulated by the state.
So,
Now, the ones that are registered, the ones that are legally registered have a max number, and that's registered by the state.
yeah, so that should take care of, 20 people coming by and dropping 20 kids
I
off.
think, Jordan, I don't know if we have it in there, but the issue that we have had on parking has been where a tradesman or somebody who's a plumber or electrician or whatever, who has quite a few employees that they go out to jobs, come to someone's house where he's, you know, where he works out of his home and parks their cars up and
Oh, yeah,
down the
no, we
street.
have that issue. We haven't had it here, I guess, but I've had it before.
Parks up and down the street, and then there's also, I know one electrician in town who used to be solely out of his, I don't know if he's still that way, but solely out of his home, and he parked all of his company trucks all up and down the
Yeah,
street and took
yeah.
up parking in front of everybody's houses and stuff. That was something that was.
Yeah, that's addressed through another.
And you have a way of dealing with that?
That's really not a code or a zoning thing, that's addressed through those traffic and parking ordinance in the code book.
Okay.
Yeah, but that goes back to, you know, if I'm running a plumbing business out of my house and I have 5 crews that show up every morning to get their
Yeah.
daily tickets, they're coming to the house now, and it's regular visits, and I've got employees coming to the house, so there are 2 places to go after it.
So I guess maybe if we change regular to daily, that would
Yeah, I
probably
think that's a good idea.
Yeah, we'll do
take care
that.
of most of that. Advertising and signs,
Yep.
that looked good to me.
Are you guys okay with the signs? For you guys that have the home-based businesses, is that sufficient for y'all?
This meets what I have currently. The only other thing that, I don't know if it gets too detailed, is I had thought about trying to find a way to make the signs temporary, something that's not cemented into the ground. You know, my signs are not. I could pull them out in 2 minutes if I needed to. But, you know, that, I don't know if we even need to go to that extent or not. But I think the sizes and locations all make sense to me.
What about the word flush? Is that necessary that it's mounted flush?
Maybe.
I mean, I'm envisioning some kind of, maybe
Well,
that's the
I guess
intent,
they're
don't
trying to
know.
keep it from having an arm
And
sticking
how else
out
would you mount it?
perpendicular.
Oh, like 10 feet out so you can't
Yeah.
How else would you mount it to the house?
Well, I mean,
hang it or whatever.
yeah, I mean, flush, it starts getting into your interpretation of flush.
Yeah,
You know, it's the
yeah.
front of the sign
Or
sticking
or
out. Or,
Okay.
I think they're just trying to keep it from
Fine.
an arm sticking out. So I think
Not a problem.
you could say face. You know, in our industry, face mounted and flush mounted are 2 different things. And so you could say face mounted. That allows you to put something on top of a face. Flush mounted tends to make it seem that it's stuck in,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah,
face is
it's
flushed.
smooth.
Yeah.
Across
So
This is
you know,
the face.
to clarify it, instead of flush, you may say
Some of them,
face.
some of them define it as, you know, it could be flush mounted to the building and could not extend out, you know, like 2 or 3 inches even.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was about the width of a board that you could probably name it.
Um,
So I just picked this one, I mean,
yeah,
That's fine.
I think it's all right.
What do y'all think about stopping here? Do you want to try to finish this whole thing today, or?
Well, what do we got? We don't have
Well, you-
much left.
Permitted uses and non-permitted uses,
Yeah.
pretty big.
Now, the what's left, really, there's two big things here. One, I think we take care of pretty quick. The other one's the existing home occupation. As I went back and reviewed other ordinances, it's, you know, how do you list, some ordinances listed only uses that were not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way you're assuming that if it's not on that prohibited list, it's allowed. Some tried to do, what I tried to do here is balance between the 2.
I think that's a better idea.
You-
A
you-
balance between the 2.
Give
Okay.
you some idea what's the general things that are allowed, and then some
Yeah.
idea of the things that are not allowed.
Yeah.
So it gives
So,
you a
I
framework,
guess-
more than a frame, it gives you some detail, but it's a framework too.
Yeah, and I guess so. I don't really care which way you want to go with that. It's just that I saw it both ways, and you know, I went back and added some prohibited uses. You know, we've had some recently, and that's why I added the word kenneling to
Mm-hmm.
of animals. We found one that was. She started out in life as a dog groomer, and then sort of went into the kenneling business, and then until the neighbors called, and then so we had to go over and tell her that she could groom, but she
Well,
couldn't
grooming
kennel
goes on during the day, but kenneling goes on all night.
all
That's what
night.
I'm
Yeah, and
saying.
apparently the
Daily,
weekend.
daily grooming.
Yeah,
That'd be enough daily grooming for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you know, the way it is now, we could probably, you know, revisit it again down the road. I did find one conflict with permitted home occupation number 7, permitted assembling, and then on number 5 on prohibited
Manufacturing or
and
assembly.
assembling. So,
I guess what that is intended, Gary, is the home crafts, if you're putting together birdhouses or something versus, you know,
Well, the language in number 7 is small scale items
Yeah.
assembled such as art. That language says small. This is manufacturing and or assembly.
Well, what you may want to strike out of number 7 is the assembling. Uses involving small-scale items such as arts and craft items.
Well, you sometimes assemble them.
I know, but I mean, I don't think that,
or in number 5, you could add the words large scale.
yeah, then we get into a definitional fight over what's.
yeah, I don't think you want, I mean, I think you've got one that assembling is not permitted and one that is. I just think maybe you uses involving small-scale item, creation such as arts and crafts, and take that assembling word out of there. Even though they may be assembling it, it's still small arts and crafts.
Yeah,
I don't know what term you use, but
like I said, this isn't the last time we'll see this, so we.
yeah, I
can-
mean, I think uses involving small-scale creation of things such as arts and crafts is fine. I don't think you have to have assembling. I think if you're creating it, it's a given that you're putting it together, but it takes out the conflicting.
Well, I guess look at that verbiage and see if we can
Okay,
Come up
change
some-
assembling
yeah.
and assembling to different verbiage.
The artist will like the word creation.
yeah, we'll look at how we can maneuver that a little bit better.
And then I guess I was a little concerned with number 9 on the prohibited uses performed or operated in an accessory building. My office is in a detached garage.
Okay.
Does that
No, I wouldn't
consider?
that to be an
I
accessory
mean,
building.
I could see somebody having a small accessory building so that, their house is full of people and house, but having an 8x10 office.
We can take 9 all the way off if you want. I mean, it's, I guess accessory building really isn't, what am I trying to say? I think the idea of doing something in a detached garage is, while it may technically be an accessory building, it's really, it's part of the house.
Part of the house, yeah.
Yeah, whereas an accessory building that you build out in the backyard strictly to put your widget shop in would be different, I think. I mean, maybe I'm playing a word game, but.
Because even a larger garage wouldn't even qualify as an accessory structure because it may be over 500 square feet,
Yeah.
correct? And it would still be allowed, where an accessory structure is limited to 500 square feet. And so you don't see those very often.
Yeah, but
So it's up to y'all.
I guess I would like to see number 9 taken out personally.
Well, we can certainly do that, and if it, ever becomes an issue, we can
Yeah,
always go
because
back.
we've already covered storage
Yeah.
in a permitted building in
Yeah.
conjunction with a permitted use.
We can do that.
And that was it that I had on my lists, going through administration and then existing home occupations.
Yeah, the existing home occupations is really the last thing I added anything to, and I added that statement
I
that
think
we
that's
talked
good.
about last time. And I think I'm trying to do that so that Danny didn't have to deal with any more car repair shops.
Yeah.
And you dealt with the appliance issue today.
Yes. Tried. We'll see.
It was a very good
If
observation.
none of y'all have made the trip to Methodist Encampment Drive
Yeah.
to look at that, you really ought to.
Mhm.
And you see where we're going with this and what started the process.
You really ought to take a drive up Alice Drive, up in Memphis, you can.
Mhm.
I won't have to give you the address, you'll see.
You'll find it real all by yourself.
Yes.
Sir,
Just last thought on the sale of firearms.
yes.
I guess I can understand certainly explosives, not being
Yeah.
wanted, but I do know a lot of people that do buy and sell firearms as kind of a side business. Does that
we
affect
do.
them? I mean, is that?
To do that legally, okay, and I don't know if we really want to talk about this in open session, they're required to have a permit from ATF.
Right, and they do actually.
And to get that permit, it generally requires a letter from the city saying that it is a permitted home occupation. And right now it's not. So, if the commission wants that to be a permitted home occupation, I certainly have no problem doing that. Cities, I mean, it's one of these things that some cities allow it, some cities don't. And then other cities will say, okay, you can sell the gun. Now, to do it too, you have to physically come to that home and buy it according to ATF. I mean, I spent an afternoon with them one time. Then it goes back to where, under direct sales, you're selling this from the house.
Right, I'm gonna tell you right up front, my opinion is, I would not encourage anyone to do any type of firearm sales or ammunition storage as a business in their home. That's just my opinion. I don't think it's a place, I understand what you're saying, and the problem with that is you're a good guy and you do it right, so you're allowed. The next guy that comes along wants to have 25 rifles in his house, and he has people, that he deals with and everything.
This is a very touchy, it's a very touchy issue.
In the world we live in today, I just don't think it's a good idea to.
Well, the guys that are, the bad actors aren't gonna pay attention to this
Right,
anyway.
we're not talking about them,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, but even the good guys, if they think you're crossing them, you're now in the Second Amendment.
Right.
I mean, this is where this goes right away.
Could we change the sale to storage, involving the storage and repair of firearms, so that you're limiting it to kind of one at a time type of a deal?
I don't know how, when I've talked to the guys, the ATF guys about this, their preference is it's either up or down, yes or no. Don't try to allow, okay, we'll let you sell the guns, but you can't sell the bullets. Or we'll let you repair them, but you can't test fire them.
My Second Amendment doesn't say how many I can have.
No, I agree. I was at a friend's house for dinner Sunday night, and he's got one of these houses that Anderson Jenkins built that has the fake closet, and that's where he's got like 50 rifles in there and a bunch of pistols. But he doesn't buy and he buys them for himself, but he's not in the business of buying and selling them. So you can't stop that.
Yeah, I've had people in during this similar discussion during the public hearing, where someone down the street from them is legally selling guns, and it's like a steady stream. And she said it's like they're arming the militants. I mean, the guy sells more guns than a gun store.
Second Amendment right doesn't give you the right to sell guns out of your house.
Yeah.
It gives you the right to own.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a touchy situation. It really is, and to answer, I think everybody's question is the best thing to do, I think, is to see what happens in the public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
agree.
When it goes to the public, they're the ones that are gonna drive that part of it, and they're the ones that are gonna direct, not only you, but council for the final adoption. And if they say take it out, we'll take it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know of one guy, this is the last thing, it's interesting, he repairs antique British safari rifles, and that is his business. I don't know if he lives in the city limits or not, but if he's in the city limits, that would put him out of business. And so maybe that's not something anybody wants in the city limits, I don't know, but he's a good guy, and he's kind of a well-known guy in that world.
Yeah.
But he's a good actor, but.
Yeah. He's a specialist.
Yeah, and maybe, I'm just throwing that out there. I do know.
I hope he lives out in the county because, generally you have to make sure it works.
That's spiral.
You have to
Well,
fire
he
it.
does have to take them he takes them to the range and
Well,
shoots them.
I had a guy bring me off the internet sort of how to make your own little box.
Oh, yeah,
you know,
shooting.
that they fire them.
Like firing them.
You buy all the parts at home at Tractor Supply.
Yeah,
You know,
We
I
did
mean,
it
it's
with
on
a
the
barrel.
internet. I mean, it's-
we used to do it with a barrel,
Yeah.
55-gallon drum.
yeah.
I knew guys in Michigan who, in their basement, they built a firing range. and
Sure.
they
Yeah.
spent all winter firing 22s
Oh,
in their basement.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I don't know. So we'll look at it. I guess the question, what we'll do is, or what we can do, and I don't know how far to out in front to get this. I wasn't really planning on coming back to you in the July 6th meeting. I may have to now since we've tabled the local plat. If we can come back, I want to get this, if I can, to a point that when the new planner gets here, Danny can say, this is what you need to take to public hearing.
Okay.
I think it's important to get this done, I really do, to help them.
And
If
this
we
will
have
be-
other items on the agenda, I think it'd be good to throw it in there. I don't think we need to have a meeting just for that item, but if
Okay.
we have other things on the agenda, it'd make sense to throw it on there.
Let me see what we've got. We don't really have anything right now towards that, but we will now unless you want me to, but I will bring the local plat back
Yeah.
on the 6th, so we can do this again on the 6th.
All right. I guess that covers staff reports. Now
You just heard it.
do we have a motion for adjournment?
Second.
Got a move and a second for adjourn. Meeting adjourned 6:15.
Next meeting is July 6th.